All right. No, you could not hear me. All right. There we go. Now you should be able to hear me. Thank you, Nitro Viper. Thank you, my friend. I got your email, by the way. I'll respond Monday. All right. I'll respond Monday and give you some response and all that. I haven't had a chance to sit with the music you sent, so I'm gonna wait until I have some time to actually sit down and listen to it. But welcome everybody. All right, so y'all can hear that. Can you hear the piano? I can't hear the piano. Oh my goodness. It's gonna be one of those streams. All right, now can you hear the piano? No, still can't hear the piano. Let's try unplugging it and plugging it back in. All right, so what I was saying before, when you guys actually couldn't hear me because everything was messed up. So what I'm doing here is I'm going into Bluetooths and devices. I am finding my keyboard, Q25. I am removing this. And now I'm going to unplug it and plug it back in, and that usually fixes it. And let's find out, shall we? Aha, see, fixed it. All right, so yeah, so what I was saying back when you couldn't actually hear me because my mic was muted is I have my complete sketch of my concerto. It's almost completed. So it started off as an idea for a violin concerto. Then I started wondering about maybe is it really good for violin? And now that I've had time to work on it, I've decided, yeah, I do want it to be for violin, but I don't want it to be for one violin. This is gonna be a concerto for 2 violins. It's a little over 6 minutes long. It might get a bit longer once I start adding like outro and intro material. But for the most part, this piece very much feels like a conversation between 2 voices. One more pessimistic, one much more optimistic. And especially during the development section, there seems to be a bit of an argument between the 2 voices, each one trying to convince the other. So I figured it'd be really fun to get 2 different violins performing the main themes. Now that I have my sketch, what I've been doing is I've been writing it out in sheet music just for a single piano. And I plan on arranging it or coming up with plans for the arrangement, going section by section, deciding, all right, which instruments do I think would play the melody? What kind of accompaniments do I want? That kind of thing I prefer to do away from my computer. So I can actually show you guys the sheet music I've been working on. Open, concerto, select. So this is what I've been doing. You can see I've broken it into sections. I've been writing it in each of the parts. It's slow work, a little tedious, but I don't mind. It's a little meditative almost as I work on this. And then once, like I said, I have my sheet music, I'll take it out to a coffee house, I'll go to a park, I'll do something like that. But one thing I was wondering about that I was talking about before is I want to readdress the conclusion. Right now, I have the whole thing, the conclusion is going to be a statement of the pessimistic theme, which eventually becomes a little more optimistic, a little more hopeful. And it goes from E minor to E major, maintaining some of the swing qualities it adopts from the... So it starts off pretty much a restatement, verbatim, of the original theme. Not changed, not really grown, not really gone anywhere. And then at the final statement, it comes back in a new key, E major instead of E minor. Or it's not technically E major, it's a bit more modal, but it's got a more major flair. And it has a bit more of the swing and harmonic interesting ideas that it takes from the second theme. What I was thinking is I kind of want to change tonics as well. So we'll listen to this real quick. I might swap this from E major to F major. We'll see. Let's listen. As usual, if you have comments, questions, anything at all that you'd like me to talk about, yap about, or explain, pop them in the comments. I'll address them as they come. And then the final statement is the transformed theme, the final version. So now let's see how it sounds if I modulate to F major. Bring the whole thing up just a half step. If I'm going to do this, I'd want to have a bit more of a pull to F major. Right now my chord ends with a D major 6. You know what? An unprepared modulation. Let's hear what an unprepared modulation would sound like, actually. It might sound just dramatic enough to be interesting. No, that F and the F sharp kind of clash. So let's try. Obvious choice would be a C dominant 7, which would pull. But I'm already using a C major 9. So it would go. I'm not sure if I kind of like that. What if we went... What if we did a substitute dominant instead? Raise that a little bit. Now, let's see. No, could we still have the F sharp? That's still the same issue. I could try. Another option into F would be an E, something built on E diminished. You could try. Get a diminished chord in there. I kind of like that. Let's listen to it in the full context. Or at least half context. I like that. I think I'll leave it like that. I like that. I think that's how we'll leave it. All right, one last modulation for the end of the piece. Who knows, maybe I'll come back to it a little bit later and change my mind. Yeah, that's that. So I'm done with the sketch. I've played this on a number of streams beforehand, so I don't know if we need to play it again unless you guys want to hear the whole thing. Let's do this. All right, we will listen to it. Let me pull up a sticky note. We are listening to the sketch. Sketch. After this, here's what I'm doing. I'm typing into this. After this, I will answer questions about music theory, composing, film scoring, etc. Pop your questions in the comments, And I'll answer them. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. Can I make this bigger? I don't know if I can. I'll make it bold. How's that? All right, so here we go. Let's start from the top. Nope, wrong one. Yes, Nitro. Yep, it's the same one. This is the final sketch that I've worked on, so the next step is going to be arranging it and orchestrating it. And thank you. And here we have the B theme, the optimist theme. Welcome, my friend. That darker chord in the middle, we can talk about that. That's a fun one. You're not the first one to point out that chord. I've had a couple students where I've used this as an example who really liked that transition. Oh yeah, this is the return of the pessimistic theme. Hey, 23, welcome, my friend. I'll have you know, you kind of ruined my main theme for this one for me. I can't listen to it without hearing the Star Wars theme that you sent me. Then the return of the optimistic theme, trying to make another argument. No worries. And then we get to the climax of the whole piece. We have the optimistic theme pop back in a reduced variation. Much lower energy, much less activity. And then it starts to build energy again. transition again into the final section, which is the conclusion. And here we hear the original theme stated almost exactly how it was originally written before we hear the final variation. And then this is what we were working on earlier in the stream. The final statement. All right, and that's the piece. So, like I said, next step is going to be arranging this. I've been writing out the sheet music for just the sketch because I prefer to do my arranging away from the computer, and especially since this is a piece that I actually want to actually be part of my portfolio. Sadly, I'm probably not going to arrange it on camera. Can definitely bring it back to the next live stream and talk about what notes I came up with and my ideas and my plans. I can try and work on the arrangement live. But for the moments where I'm making decisions and deciding on the personality, I prefer not to do that with a camera in my face, just because there's no pressure to perform, if you get what I'm saying. I'm allowed to make mistakes. When there's not a camera in my face, I don't have to be a teacher. I don't have to be a professional. I'm allowed to try stupid ideas. I'm allowed to take risks. I'm allowed to be a little more authentic. Not that I'm inauthentic on camera, but there's less pressure. There's less of a need to perform. So I like to go to like a coffee house or a park with my sheet music and a good notebook. I actually have 2 of them on my desk right here. These are the notebooks I use to take notes on ideas and arranging. They're actually some like arranging maps from old pieces I've written in there. And so once I've got an idea of what I can do, then I can bring it up on camera and we can start like actually arranging it live. But when I'm doing the brainstorming process, I prefer to do that somewhere with a nice view, maybe a breeze, and copious amounts of caffeine in my system. Yeah, thank you, Nacho. Thank you. I have made mistakes on camera. Don't worry. I have had more than my fair share of humanizing on live stream. I think, what was it? So those of you who have been here for a little bit, I did a live stream once where the whole point, I used to do live streams that were themed, like lessons, where I would come here, I would put a poll on Instagram. People would vote on what lesson they would want to be. It's basically like free private lessons, but done in a live stream format. And one of them was how to write music for big band. And yeah, for those of you who saw it, I started the stream pretty confident because I've written professional pieces for big band arrangements before. I mean, you guys can kind of tell from the sketch possibly, but I have a bit of a jazzier voice with my music. And so I've done big band pieces, and I came on the stream confident that I didn't have to practice, I didn't have to prepare anything, I would just share my methods. But it had been like a year since I've done big band, and nothing was working. I think I ended up changing the title of the live stream to like Composer Fails at Big Band Jazz, and it was still a valuable live stream. It was a live stream where I think a couple of you said that the value of it was being able to see how I deal with failure, how I deal with frustration, how I problem solve when everything is going wrong, but I could not do it. I couldn't get it right. And so afterwards, it was pretty embarrassing, but afterwards I went off camera, I practiced for a little bit, and then in the next stream, that's when I was able to actually, all right, I got my process down again. I've practiced it. I know it works again. I know what mistakes I was making. And then I was able to do the actual lesson teaching how to do that style. But yeah, so don't worry. And in the past, I've done live streams where I've worked on actual soundtracks and commissions live because I just didn't have time to do YouTube. And so I wanted to keep the channel live. So I just like televised my process and when I was working on real projects. Those were always fun. But yeah, for this piece is actually kind of a little bit more personal than a lot of the pieces I've done in the past. It started off as just an academic assignment. But now this one actually has a bit of, I've put a lot more of myself into it. Been a bit cathartic. These past couple months, I've had a lot of like personal drama going on. And so I find that it's been a good way to kind of like vent some of that. So I want to be able to make this a bit more personal, and so I'll do most of it off camera for the arranging, at least the brainstorming phases. But don't worry, I will do some arranging and orchestrating live on camera for all of you. I mean, I can't show you guys the sketch and then not share the process. I'll probably, once I have my map figured out, that's what I want to do alone. That's what I want to do off camera, is figure out my map, go section by section. Here are the types of layers I want. Here are the general voices and styles I want, the instruments I want in each layer. How I want to map the energy and emotion that's going to be arranged. And then I can break down that map if you guys would like me to. But then I'll do the actual arranging. Once the map is done and I know what I need to do, I'll do that. I'll do the whole step process in front of you guys, or at least a good chunk of it, because I work on this off camera too. I'll do a chunk of that. And then when it comes time to make an actual MIDI arrangement, I'll do that live as well. And who knows, maybe I won't do a MIDI arrangement. Maybe I'll try saving up, or maybe do a crowdfunding kind of thing to see if I can get it recorded by an actual orchestra or ensemble. That'd be really cool. At least getting the violins that are going to be soloists recorded, that would be really, really cool. Yeah, 23 remembers that one. Remembers that stream. 23, I had to skip caffeine yesterday morning. It was a bad day just because of that. Yeah, I'm a little too dependent. These Frost caffeines, which are like knockoffs of ice caffeine, are like 85 cents at Aldi, and so I've just been chugging these. I've got a caffeine problem, but as someone with like severe ADHD, caffeine helps me focus. It gives me lots of energy, but it helps me like laser in and focus. So that's why I'm almost always drinking some kind of caffeine during streams. During the summer, it's usually like some kind of energy drink like this, or during the winter or fall, I have my giant like 32-ounce mug that I drink, which is almost about 2 liters. Not 2 liters, it's almost like a liter. It's like about a liter of just like tea that I'll be drinking while I do the live streams. And that's related. Thank you, Nacho. Glad. But yeah. So what do you guys want to work about? I can talk about that transition. Nitro mentioned that liking this transition. I've had a lot of people, actually. I've done a couple, I think I've done about like 4 private lessons where I used this sketch as examples for different kind of things that we were going through. And like, yeah, everyone in the lessons likes this chord. And Nitro, you mentioned it, so I'll describe what this is. So throughout this piece, I have this idea of these 2 chords, a C major 9 and a D major 6. And these become a recurring motif. Yep, so, oops, that was too, I rushed it. It's supposed to be 2 bars. All right, but these 2 chords come in frequently throughout this piece. They become part of the intro. They become parts of transitions, and they become a tool for specifically transitioning between the themes and kind of slowing down the momentum here and there. So they play an important part in the sketch. And right here, what I'm actually doing is I'm transitioning. I am modulating across 2 different themes, keys. So in this first chunk, I'm in the original key, which is about, what is that, E Dorian? Yeah, so this is E Dorian, mostly. So it focuses on E minor. It's a bit of a chromatic harmony, but largely based in the Dorian mode. And over here, the first time we hear the new theme, it's in D major. All right? So I had to take a way of going from E minor to D major. All right? So what I did is I started off with the 2 chords that were part of that motif to signal that we're going into a transition. And that's where we get this beautiful little chord. Let's listen. That one. So then this chord right here is actually the key, all right? This one right here, A dominant 7. A dominant 7 with a little D up there. A little crunchy, but when you separate it up here, I just added the D to keep this constant little pattern. This A dominant 7 is what allows me to go to D major and have a nice strong pull. But I wanted to have a nice strong pull into A dominant 7 as well. So what I could do is I could do an E dominant 7. And kind of have that strong kind of, it's called a extended dominant 7th, where you go from a dominant chord to another dominant chord, and then go to your resolve. All right, so let's see here. Let me save here. Go over here. So what we do here is basically I've got a dominant 7 to another dominant 7 to the 1 chord. All right. In other words, actually, let's pull this aside so you guys can watch. Oops. So what I did is I needed to arrive here. The easiest way to arrive at a specific chord and feel like it's really pulling you to that chord is to find the 5th scale degree of that chord, in this case A, and build a dominant 7th chord out of it, which is a major chord with an added minor 3rd on top. Now the really cool thing is you can chain these. I can say, all right, I've got this really cool kind of arrival between these two. What happens if I add another one? I just go, okay, let's go back. E is the 5th of A dominant 7, and I'm going to build another dominant 7. And what it creates, these chains of dominant 7 chords leading into the 1 end chord, is called an extended dominant. All right? Extended dominants. Extended dominants equal a chain of 5/7 chords, secondary dominants, leading one into the next. All right? And so it creates this really cool kind of sound that you probably have heard in a bunch of different pieces. But rather than just stick with this, I thought, let's try tritone substitution and do a B flat dominant 7th instead. Because anytime you take a dominant chord and you drop it by a tritone, here, let me demonstrate actually. So the power of the dominant chord comes from these two notes, the 3rd and the 7th, which form a super crunchy interval called a tritone. The whole point of the tritone is it wants to resolve. All right, and it resolves very nicely into its target. These two notes resolve very nicely to these. If we drop this whole chord in octave, you can see it spread out a little bit more. Tritone going to the 1 and 3. So that's why it's such a useful, strong chord. Now watch what happens if we take the entire chord and we drop everything by a tritone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's the same tritone, just inverted. All right, and it still resolves very nicely. This time, if we add an A on top, we can see how it still resolves. So if you take the entire chord and drop it by a tritone, this becomes a substitute dominant, also known as tritone substitution. And we get this very nice sound, if I can play this chord. Right? Where now the biggest advantage of doing this is it's much closer. Everything moves by half step instead of having a leap between the roots and a lot more space between the chords. And on top of that, it also creates a significantly more chromatic sound. And so that's what I did over here. I used a substitute dominant. I created a chain of dominants, an extended dominant series, and then I turned my E dominant chord into a B flat dominant to help bring that nice little sound, specifically so I could emphasize these two notes, which were repeating throughout the entire kind of transition. And that's how I created my beautiful little transition from one key into the next. One thing I should mention is I also left out a note. There should be an F there, but I ignored it because anytime you're working with extended chords like this, where you have more than 3 notes, the 5th scale degree is the most neutral and you can always omit it. Because if you think about it, removing the 5th doesn't change the function. You've still got the tritone, you've still got the root, it all works. And so that's how I did it. Good, Nitro, I'm glad you're writing it down. 23, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, so that's a tool I use a lot. That's how we have this nice, beautiful, if we listen to the whole thing, one after the other. We'll listen to the first half, the second half of the main theme, leading into the transition, and then my new chord. We have our transition, 4 bars, bringing back the original motif. Now we deviate to create that extended dominance and that substitute dominant combined. And we arrive seamlessly. All right. Then let's see, there were a couple other moments that I thought were really fun. Here, I like this one, where the transition, where is it? No, not here. Where is it? It's right here. It's between, yeah, these two. Where am I? Yeah, so right here, where the transition is actually done largely from a common tone in the melodies. So I modulated so that the harmony doesn't pull quite as much. We have an F sharp, no, we have a B, I don't know what that is. So that is a B minor. That's a sus chord. That's a B sus 2. And a B sus 2 doesn't necessarily pull to A major or A minor. There's not really a feeling of like, oh, that sounded very satisfying. All right. Yeah, it's a cool little sound, but it doesn't have a harmonic reason to modulate. Instead, this modulation comes from the melodies. All right. Or in one moment, I am in, what key is this? I am in the key of D major. The next I am in A minor, not because of any harmonic trickery, but because of some melodic trickery, where I overlap the two themes. One is holding out an A as its last note. The next one starts on A as its first note. And because of that, because there's that overlap, we have, again, a seamless modulation, not led by harmony, but rather led by the melody. See? Where this modulation like that was one that I was pretty proud of myself. I really like the way that this is my favorite section. It's the most intense. It's going to be really fun to orchestrate it. I get to vent a lot in this one. And yeah, so this is an example of a modulation being led by the melody instead of the harmony. Goobermeister, how do you know how much chords pull towards another? Also, your content is awesome. Thank you very much, my friend. I'm glad you found it useful. Hey, Tamashi's back. It's been a while. I haven't seen you around in a stream in a while. Tamashi being one of our regulars, one of the oldest regulars. Tamashi and 23. Showing up. What's up? So, Goobermeister, how do you know how much chords pull towards one another? Also, your content is awesome. So, there are two ways you can know. One is by just trusting your ear. All right, if you want to trust your ear, you can just see. That sounds satisfying. All right, this sounds satisfying. Right? So you can trust your ear and play around if that's what you want to do. The other has to do with music theory and something called dissonance. All right? Dissonant intervals are intervals that sound very crunchy, like that tritone we talked about earlier. The purpose of dissonance throughout the vast majority of music theory history has been to resolve. It's a tool for building energy and resolving it. Right? So if you study something called functional harmony is a way of organizing music theory across mostly scales and keys. Chords get there. So we're going to talk about a couple different types of harmony, actually. All right. Functional harmony is harmony that categorizes chords based on their function within a larger context. Scales / keys. Chords, and we'll say chords / notes based on their function. That's where it gets the name functional harmony. Functional harmony doesn't mean that it's harmony that works. It means that it's harmony where each of the chords get their relationship based off this is home, this departs from home, this is the farthest from home, and you come back. All right? I have a free class on functional harmony. If you want to take a free class on functional harmony, here is my my website. Go to the Academy page. This one right here, Music Theory and Harmony 1, Functional Harmony. Free class. I do ask if you do, there is a donation option. I please ask that you consider donating. Recommended donation is about $20, but anything works. Even $1 or $2 is very helpful. This class free. All of these classes here are free. I'm very passionate about making free education free for music because I myself have had so many doors slammed in my face about education, so many barriers I had to overcome just trying to learn all this stuff. I had to drop out of music school before I even really was able to start because it was too expensive. And yeah, so yeah, very passionate about making education free. I genuinely believe we are on the cusp of a brand new golden age of orchestral music. It has never once in all of history been easier and more accessible to be an orchestral composer. The beautiful availability of technology to write for the orchestra means anyone can do it. You can write orchestral music even if it's not going to be played by actual players. If you have access to a computer, a laptop, an iPad, something, you can, even if you just go to the library and work with MuseScore and work on like a public library's computer, you can write music. The last resource that is being gatekept is knowledge of how to do it. There is software for writing music free. You can find decent software free. MuseScore is free. Most major DAWs and professional DAWs have free versions. You can get those for free. Sound libraries like Museo make it so affordable. Thousands of professional libraries for just $10 a month. It was such a freaking amazing deal. When they first came out, I thought they were a scam, and it took me the longest time to actually learn to trust them, and they're incredible. They have not backtracked. They have not gone back on their deal. They make it available for so many people. It's incredible. All of these things are available. The last barrier is education, because places like Berkeley are charging $10 grand a month to study with them. It's ridiculous. It makes me angry. And that's why I try to do this stuff for free. But I do have bills to pay, so if you can, if you sign up for my free classes, please consider donating even just a little bit. It's a pay whatever you want kind of setup. If you want more detailed education, private lessons are an option. All right, you can sign up for private lessons. I do an ongoing mentorship program. You all can also check out my books. Another great option is my textbook right here, which covers my 12-week string writing intensive is still available as well. That's a 12-week composing course. We've got, there's 5 of us doing the course together. You can follow along. I lead the discussions. It's taught through the lens of writing for strings, but it's focusing mostly on just composing in general. People of all backgrounds. That's my sales pitch. Let's get back. So functional harmony, that's one way you can know. I've got lots of live videos you can watch as well. Then there are other types of harmony. For example, Neo-Riemannian theory, which I don't know if I spelled that right correctly, but Neo-Riemannian theory tends to be the foundation for a lot of what I do nowadays. Functional harmony formed my foundation and my basis, how I got started. I still use it. It's amazing. I am not saying don't learn functional harmony. I would always say start with functional harmony. I'd say Neo-Riemannian theory tends to be more useful for people who don't have a background with functional harmony because it's harmony that focuses on chord functions based on chord pairs. So 2 chords, it's chord relationships. If you know my video about CRs and stuff, that's from Neo-Riemannian theory. The idea is chords don't get their function based off of a key, off a scale. You look specifically just at groups of 2. This chord gets its function based off what chord follows it, basically. All right? They're both very cool. I would recommend, so those are those resources. Goobermeister, thank you so much for making these things free. I myself have been trying to learn for free, and I truly believe your content has taught me the most thoroughly and clearly. Thank you. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. I want to try and make high quality, structured education as free as possible. Goobermeister, also, you're so right about many things being accessible. I'm 14, and it's hard for me to learn without much income because where I live, it's hard to find a job at my age. Yes, it's very difficult, especially for young composers like you. All right, there's a paywall that's ridiculous. It was the bane of my existence for so long. I had to learn so much of this stuff without being able to afford much of an education. So that's why I'm very passionate about this. That's why I make it my kind of my mission to share this stuff. 23, good busy summer. Can't make every stream, unfortunately, but I made this one. Oh, awesome. So Tomashi and 23 are having a conversation. Let's see here. So yeah, what were we talking about? So we were talking about transitions. All right, so this was a and we'll listen to an example of modulation where we talked about modulating based off common tones in the melody. All right, so this was a modulation, like I said, that was not led by the harmony, but it was prepared through the melody. Now let's do, I don't know if it's a modulation, but there's another moment in here that I was very proud of. If y'all have questions, pop them below. All right, yes, it was this one right here. No, this wasn't it. It was the first half of this. It was the ending of the first variation of the primary theme, right here. That one measure. I'm kind of proud of that harmony. I like how much energy it has. All right, so this is another example of, what is this chord? So this, I believe, is another dominant chord of some sort. That's an E flat, A. So I have no idea what that is, actually. I wrote it down. Let's get the sheet music. This is why I like to have sheet music. So what measure is this? This is measure 68. Measure 68. Where are you? Oh yeah, so yeah, it is a B dominant 7. So we have an A major, A sus2, B major, and then B dominant 7, and I just removed a couple notes. So this one is, again, another example of that B dominant 7 is going to pull me nicely into E minor. All right, so this is another example of, I came up with 2 chords. All right, so the chord was originally, my progression ended with an A major. So my progression needs to go to E minor. So you guys can see how I kind of process modulations. Because I freaking love harmony. I'm a huge harmony nerd. This is like why I spend most of my time when I'm sketching music is the harmony, because I love it. It's what I feel best at. It's when I first started, it's what I spent the most time studying. When I first started trying to teach myself music, I graduated from my master's program with like 10 grand that I had saved across like the 6 years I was in school, in savings. And I told myself after graduating my master's program, I didn't want to be a therapist after all. I told myself I was going to give myself a couple of months to just live off savings before I got a real job. A little bit of gap time to just focus 100% of my time and effort into learning as much as I possibly could about music and music theory and composing. I was only able to do it for, I think, like 3 months before my savings got small enough that I'm like, okay, I've got to get a job. And so that's when I started working as a trainer. But most of that time, I identified that I wanted to work on harmony, I wanted to work on melody writing, and I wanted to work on orchestration. Those were the 3 areas I figured were most important for my growth as a composer, for figuring out what kind of music I wanted to write. And if you want to know the process I used to figure that out and what I needed to learn, and how I taught myself all this stuff, go to my bookshop. This one right here, the Composer's Roadmap, it's free. This is the process I used to learn everything I needed to learn. To basically not learn everything I learned. This is the process I used to figure out what I needed to know. When I decided I wanted to be a composer and I had 0 musical training as a composer, I had 0 musical training in music theory. I just wanted to be a composer. I had 0 qualifications. This is the process I used to make a list of all the things I needed to know. All right, this is how I figured out what things I needed to learn, what things I needed to teach myself. This is the process I used to go from being someone who had never composed a piece of his music at the age of 22, writing my very first piece of music, to within a matter of like 3 or 4 years becoming professional and getting paid for this stuff. This is the process, and again, because I am very passionate about making things free, it's a free book. It comes in PDF form, ebook that you can read on e-readers, and audiobook if you want to listen to it. As you can see, it's got some awesome reviews. Kay says it's amazing, 5 stars. Brett says a unique perspective as always. I really enjoyed this book, and it was very kind of you to make it free for the public. I'm always looking to improve my writing, and this book gave me a clear and easy follow formula to do that. Caleb gave me 5 stars too, saying it exceeded in my admittedly already quite high expectations, and for absolutely free, fantastic. Barath has covered everything. I'm so happy it's been provided free. Thank you, my friends. Thank you so much for your wonderful reviews. Awesome. So yeah, it's a free book, free resource. Check it out. But all that to say, it's a tangent because again, I have ADHD and I have a propensity to go on tangents. Harmony was the first thing I worked on. I realized I wanted to work on harmony. I wanted to work on melody writing. I wanted to work on orchestration. I knew what things I needed to learn within each of those categories. Harmony was the very first one. It's the one I've been working on the longest as a composer. It's what I feel like I am best at. And so this is how I do modulations. Long story short. So I knew that one measure I needed to arrive at E minor. Let's color this, shall we? We'll say this is my arrival. Let's make that a bit brighter. On one hand, I have where I need to end up. On the other hand, I had where I was starting. I was starting on A major, an A major, and I needed to arrive here. And I wanted it to have lots of energy. I wanted to build lots of energy, so I knew I wanted to use something like, my first thing I decided was I'm doing a dominant 7th. All right? So I had the dominant 7th, which I taught you guys earlier in this live stream. I decided this is what I was going to do. So I had that's better. It's a little bit better. So then I decided, all right, let's try creating a bit more motion between these two chords. I thought, all right, what happens if I create a common tone? What happens if I take this A major and I turn it into a sus chord? All right, because I decided, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. I started off with a B major, not B dominant 7th, because a B major can do the same thing. It's out of the key. It works well enough. A major, and this is why I said I had, this is how I came up with this. It's like A major, I'm using a secondary dominant to arrive here. So that was the strategy. This is where I'm starting again. I wanted to bridge the gap between these two. All right, these two chords have no notes in common. One strategy I like to use when I want to bridge the gap, build a bit more momentum from one chord into the next that has no notes in common, is I split the first chord and I turn it into a sus chord. sus2 or sus4, doesn't matter which, either one would suddenly give me a note in common. So anytime you have two chords that have 0 notes in common, sus chords can help bridge that up. All right, but when I put it all together, I still felt like there was a slower momentum. Because this chord at the end of the measure is a little longer than the others, it slows down the momentum. I didn't want to slow down the momentum, so what I did is I chopped my chord in half. Remember what I told you earlier, that the 5th is a neutral tone? So I took the 5th scale degree, which is, so this is what the chord looks like, a major. I muted the 5th, and I added the 7th. So then again, I have kind of a feeling of movement. It's the same chord, B major, into B dominant 7, adds a bit more crunch. Did a little bit of voice leading, and then I had my transition, which had a lot more momentum, a lot more energy, and helped me build into my next phrase. We can hear it put in context. Here we have the chord progression, A major, A sus2, B major, B dominant 7, E minor, arrival. We can see how it builds with the melody, and we hear the whole thing put together. And yeah, so that was another thing I was a little proud of here. So we can listen to it in context. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of it. Let's see here. Other comments. Yes, thank you, Tamashi. Appreciate it. Blank. I can come up with 4-bar ideas, even if it's hard for me. But going beyond that is brutal. I learned about song structures from composers, and I listen to but composers I listen to don't just start with melodies or chords right away. Good question. So let me address that. I need to use the restroom real quick, so I will address that in a moment. While I use the restroom, we'll just put this music on play. All right. I will be back. All right, thank you for your patience. So, where were we? Blank. That's right. I can come up with 4-bar ideas, even if it's hard for me. But going beyond that is brutal. I learned about song structures, but composers I listen to don't just start with melodies or chords right away. I don't know which composers you listen to, but I guarantee you at least some of them do. The idea of composers just writing music left to right across a piece of sheet music, like the idea of John Williams writing top down, this is what the French horns are doing, this is what the violins are doing, this is what the oboe's doing, move on to the next bar, this is what everybody's doing. That's a myth. There have only been a handful of actual composers throughout history that could do that. Camille Saint-Saëns and Mozart being 2 of them. Most composers, if it's not melody plus chords, most composers and most songwriters start with something, some kind of sketch. All right. Sometimes it's a sketch on their instrument of choice. If you're a piano player, you can write a sketch on piano. If you're a guitarist, sometimes it's chords plus singing. Whatever you do, everyone has a process. Very, very, very rarely will someone focus on trying to write a complete piece of music from the start. Lots of beginners try, and they lose steam very quickly. So if you can come up with 4-bar ideas, my recommendation would be to work on your workflow. So first you mentioned it, song structure is important. Struggling with making longer pieces. Tip number 1. Let's say tips. Tip number 1, figure out your workflow. All right? A workflow is a reliable and repeatable method, or I should say order, of writing that allows you to build momentum. Honestly, this is about like 75% of my private students. 75% of my private students who come to me struggling with writer's block, who struggle with not finishing pieces, who struggle with a bunch of stuff, we just need to figure out a workflow. Quite often, I will have students who want to work with me, and we start working, and we're trying to figure out the workflow, and they tell me this isn't helpful. This isn't what I'm working with. This isn't something. Actually, I wonder, one of my students, Ludovic, are you on here? Ludovic and I, incredible artist. I love working with him. And give you a little bit of shout out. Hope you don't mind, Ludovic. We butt heads a little bit. Because Ludovic came to me with very specific goals in mind. And one of the advantages and disadvantages of working with lots of beginners, having been much more experienced myself, is a lot of time when people come to me with a specific idea of what they want in mind, what they want isn't actually what they want. Someone will come to me saying, I want to master harmony like you. And great, we'll start off with that. But then as the lessons progress, I start to realize like, oh, that's not actually what you want. You don't actually want to learn how to write harmony like me. You don't want to be able to write melodies like me. What you want is you've seen how I can write a melody like that from a chord progression. And so you think that if we're able to learn how to make chord progressions like me, you're going to be able to write full-length pieces. And that's very rarely the case. And so instead, I have to find a way to like navigate to helping the student learn what they want, but also to get what they're actually looking for. And so Ludovic and I actually ended up butting heads during a lesson where we were working on trying to figure out a different workflow. And I ended up chewing him out a little bit. I asked him, I was like, can I be blunt? Because I was talking about trying a different approach to writing. And Ludovic told me, he's like, I already have a way of writing. I don't need a new way of writing. And I asked him if I could be blunt and direct. And he said, yes. I said, okay, your current way of doing things stink. All right, it's bad. And I didn't say that lightly. I meant it because I genuinely believed it. And the reason why was because he had not finished a piece of music. Hadn't been able to finish one, ever. And so if your process is not getting you the result, and that's why he had come to me. He had come to me because he wanted to figure out why he couldn't finish pieces. As a general rule of thumb, if your way of doing things is not getting you what you want, then your way of doing things is bad, or at least incorrect for you. It's not right for you. So you, my friend, if you are struggling to move past 4 bars, my assumption, my instinct would say the way you're coming up with those 4 bars probably isn't working for you. So you might try something else. Here's my process. Here's my process for coming up with a workflow. This is what we do in private lessons together. My process for finding a workflow. And I will say, I'm not that blunt with everyone. I was blunt with that particular student because that's the kind of relationship we have. We're able to be blunt with each other, all right? I am experienced enough as an educator. I have worked in universities. I have worked with smaller schools. I have worked with over 100 private students across 6 different continents. I'm able to adapt my teaching style to meet the unique needs of whatever students I'm working with. So I'm not a mean teacher. I'm not blunt with everyone. It depends on who this person is and what they respond to. So my process for finding a workflow. Start by identifying 3 pieces of music that you wish you could have written. All right? Once you've done that, listen to each piece and make a list of every decision you think the composer needs to make. So that could be, all right, at some point they had to make a chord progression, right? At some point, I can hear a bass line, they had to come up with a bass line. At one point, they had to come up with a melody, right? They had to come up with a percussion section. They had to come up with every list that you think at some point in the process, the composer had to do this. All right, at some point in the process, the composer had to make this decision. Make a list of all those decisions. Those of you who have downloaded my free book, this is probably going to be familiar with you, hopefully, because you've read the book. Once you've made a list of all those decisions, modify that list to reflect the decisions you'd likely think you would probably need to make on most pieces you write. All right? Once you have a list, you're like, all right, so if I'm going to write music, I probably need to write a chord progression. I probably need to write melody. I probably need to make a bass line. I probably need to make other layers of the music. And then I need to find the structure. I need to do all these kind of things. All right? Once you've done that, experiment with different orders of making each decision. All right? So you can say, like, maybe I try a melody first approach. Maybe I try a chords first approach. Some people are like, hey, I'm a drummer. I'm going to try the rhythm first. I'm going to come up with a cool groove and decide what happens. Whatever decision. Some people are like me, and I typically start with chords first, and I typically start with structure first. Most composers, so we can give an example of my workflow. We'll do a very simplified version. My workflow, like the vast majority of composers, starts with structure, which you, my friend, blank, mentioned yourself. Structure is very important. Is first. All right, you can't write a symphony without realizing that you're writing a symphony, right? You can't write a song without realizing that you're writing a song. You can't write a character theme without understanding what character you're writing it for. So structure is the number and order of different melodies / themes in your music. E.g., AABA is a very common song structure. This needs 2 themes, a theme A and a theme B, and it's going to be played. Theme A gets played, theme A gets repeated. Then you introduce theme B, then you play theme A one last time. All right? It's a very common structure in music. So once I know what I'm writing, answer the question, what am I writing? All right, is it a character theme? Is it a sonata? Is it a concerto like this one? Is there a structure or form that's very common with it? All right. Then, after that, I do chords first. All right, well, first, actually, I study my source material. All right. So if I'm writing a character theme, I want to study the character. I want to get to really know that character. All right. So whatever it is, I'm going to study my source material, study my sources of inspiration, and I've documented my process for that across a lot of things, including my textbook. You can grab copies of my textbook, The Musical Storyteller. This is a detailed approach of my entire process. Study my source material. Then start with chords first. I write the melody. Next, using the chords as inspiration. And then finally, I reharmonize to make the harmony cooler if I feel it is necessary. All right, that's my process. So if you are struggling with taking 4-bar pieces and making them longer, I would recommend finding your workflow first, all right, and experimenting with different ways. If that's hopefully that's helpful. If not, I can give you some more solid advice. It could just be a skill issue, not an insult, just an idea that if you're new, you're trying to learn new skills, here's what I would do. Here are the free resources I would use. Go to my bookshop. Start off, download the Composer's Roadmap. Free book, all right? Free ebook, free PDF, free audiobook. When you download it, it comes with 3 different formats you can listen to, right? See, PDF, EPUB, audiobook. After that, check out the Academy pages. Take my classes. They're free, all right? I ask that if you sign up, consider donating. Recommended donation is anywhere from $5 to $20. They're good classes. Check them on harmony, melody, orchestration, and arranging, all right? Quality classes, free. I'd recommend checking them all out. Build your foundation, your knowledge, your skill, your craft as a composer. And the more you learn, the more you practice, and the more you understand your own workflow, the more easily you will find yourself able to actually complete pieces. So that's a bit of a roundabout way. I hope that's helpful. I hope that answers your question. That's what I would do. Euthymania, yes, harmony is fun. Yeah, harmony is my favorite. It really is. That's my favorite part about composing, is coming up with really cool chord progressions. And I find it very inspiring from coming up with melodies and themes and just the general personality of a soundtrack. Vanessa, hi, I like your videos. I would like to do covers with different vibes. Would you do a video about how to do rearrangements based in an existing piece of music? Ooh, that would be fun. Yeah, that could be fun. I could try that. Send me a reminder on Instagram or send me an email. I'll add it to my list of ideas for videos. So yeah, so what I would recommend though, however, Vanessa, couple ideas. Look up Tabletop Composer, comma, what's the video? Genre? We'll try genre. What's the keyword? I think. Template. We'll see template. Try template. I can think of the video. This is a live stream, it looks like. Live stream composing lesson, turning your favorite music into templates. You know what? I'm just gonna pull up YouTube. I'm gonna find the video. I have a video where basically how can you study a piece of music and use it as the basis for creating a template. I released this because after I did my template about Skyrim style music, I got a lot of people asking about how I created the template for that. Yes. The easiest way to study film music, no sheet music necessary. This is the video. How I make my templates without sheet music. 10-minute video, super simple, super short. Check it out. This will teach you how to create templates based off different genres and styles, all right? So if you like a piece of music by like the band Daughter that you really like, you could study that piece and create a template of how to write similar music. If you really like Skyrim music like I do, you could study Skyrim music and create a template how to write music like that. If you like Hans Zimmer's music for Pirates of the Caribbean, any type of music that you like, this method is how I create templates to write styles based off genres and music I like. So hopefully you find that helpful, Vanessa. Sam Rabbit, can I ask you a question? Of course you can. I listen to a lot of electronic music, and I have noticed that in a lot of music there are no chords present. How do they come up with amazing melodies without using chords? Like, how do artists come up with a sense of progression without the help of chords? Sam Rabbit, are they using a hidden chord progression? If so, then how? Yes, excellent question. So my idea would most likely be, here's how I put this. Harmony, we'll say harmony is the presence of multiple voices accompanying a primary voice. All right. Typically, most common example, I'll say. We'll say harmony is accompanied by a primary voice using chords. All right, that's what we'll say. All right, we'll just keep things simple. I'm trying to keep it broad. Harmony is the use of, we'll just simplify it, the use of chords to accompany a melody. All right. This is highly reductionist, and the music theory purists out there will hate me for this definition, but that's okay. This works for our intents and purposes. Implied harmony equals, how do I describe this? The use of chordal tones in a melody without necessarily the presence of chords in the accompaniment. So if we look at an example of my melodies here, here's a good example. F and D. All right. F sharp and D are both found in D major. All right. So even if this is an example of a melody where I used the harmony to write the melody. So if we listen to it, right? I used this chord progression to write this melody. And you can still see evidence of it. Even if I decided I'm not going to use the chords in my final arrangement, I can still have it be implied by having multiple voices. For example, like what happens if I take this top line of my chords? I don't use the whole chords. I just use this top line and decide that's my harmony. That could work. It sounds like a counter melody. All right. And between this counter melody and my melody, I could probably figure out what the chords were. All right. So F sharp, D, and A, those are the notes from D major. All right. Then over here, A becomes A sharp. It's a D diminished. All right. No, I mean A sharp, so it's D augmented. I don't know why I said diminished. All right, over here, G and D. G and D and B. That's a G major. All right, so you can see how multiple voices, even though you don't hear strict chords, you can see how the notes interacting between multiple voices can still hint at those chords. For example, D and B. All right, that could be a D, like B and D. That's B minor. Or B diminished. All right, both of which are used in the harmony. So you can see how between these two voices, they don't play the chords outright, but they can still imply them because the notes are still being used. And that's a common strategy, like you said, in a lot of electronic music. A lot of composers will start with a chord progression first. They'll come up with an idea that they like. All right, they'll come up with an idea that they like I did, and they'll use those chords to write the melody. Then, from their melody, they'll use it to come up with a counter melody using the chord progression. Then maybe they'll come up with a bass line. Then maybe they'll come up with like a rhythmic idea as well. And then they don't need the chords. They can ignore the chords if they don't want the pads, or they don't want the rhythmic chords or arpeggios or anything like that. They've got multiple layers already that, because they were all built on the same chord progression, help harmonize themselves between the four voices, if that makes sense. So So yeah, that's a lot of them will just use the chord progression to write all the ideas and then delete the chord progression and come up with and just don't use it. And it can still, but even though you don't hear the strict suspended chords or sustained chords, I mean, suspended means something else. Even though you don't hear the full sustained chords, doesn't mean that they don't still have an impact, because you use those chords to write all the different layers of your music. They can still have an impact even if you don't hear the chord progression itself. Hopefully that answers your question and didn't just confuse people. Tamashi, so like we shouldn't a whole piece? I'm not sure. I'm sorry, Tamashi, I'm not quite sure. Paul, hey, my cousin Paul's on. Good to see you, Paul. Thank you for the emojis. Tamashi, you are getting good at piano. Practicing? Yes, actually. Thank you. I appreciate it. I have been practicing piano, mostly because now I finally have a piano. You can't see it. Actually, my whole office is a little nicer now. You can't really see on camera, but I've got stuff hanging on the wall, so I don't have the blank white serial killer walls. I've got nice sound paneling. You can see one of them over there, the nice big blue one. I've got two more big ones, a light blue and a grayish behind my camera. I got a couch, a rug, stuff on the walls, instruments. And all I'd say, in the other room, I have a piano, finally, for the first time in years. So a lot of this actually was sketched out on a piano with sheet music in front of me. Just kind of a change of scenery. In fact, this chord progression started out in Cubase. I came up with this chord progression. I think it was very simple. It's like D major, G major, B minor, E minor. I think this was these chords were the original ones. That was the original chord progression. You can actually still see it. Everything else was added at the piano using combination of music theory and just where my fingers just naturally led. I love the sound of a good seventh chord with this in third inversion. So instead of you take the seventh and drop it. I love that kind of harmony. Good, Sam Rabbit. That makes sense. Thank you, I'm good. Euthymania, what piano do you have? Like brand or model? I have the free piano from a smoker's house. That's what I have, and a missing leg. I don't know what the brand is. It's an upright piano. I got it off Facebook Marketplace, or my roommate got it off Facebook Marketplace for free, just from people who wanted to get rid of it. When we got it, it was in terrible shape, out of tune, so I tuned it, and need to tune it again, because the tuning was, when a piano's really out of tune, at least the method I use for tuning pianos, you tune it against itself. Using a bit of software, you play each of the notes, then the software kind of tells you, creates a map for that piano, and you kind of go through and you tune it. So it tuned it to itself, so even though it was ridiculously out of tune, in fact, like several notes being completely tuned to entirely different pitches because it was so out of tune, it got much better, but I got to tune it again just to kind of, now that it's in a better tuning position, make it even better, if that makes sense. So it was really out of tune. It's almost, if you think of like a video game kind of metaphor, it was almost dead. I had enough health potion to keep it from dying. So now I need to actually give it another health potion to finish the job and get back to full health, if that makes sense. A nerdy little metaphor. Sam Rabbit, like if I play the bass line on the root, maybe an arpeggio playing a couple of chord notes, then the melody will harmonize itself. Exactly. Yep. Multiple voices. You don't need sustained chords to provide harmony. Multiple voices can harmonize in and of themselves. That's actually something I do quite a lot, actually. So in my final arrangement, I probably won't have these chords. I probably won't have these chord progressions written out like this. I'll probably have multiple different voices harmonizing between themselves. If we look at, so different pieces I've written. If I had an example, I'd pop one up. But, yes, Euthymania. Yep. I like, I enjoy hearing Enjoy having pianos, give them a little bit of love. I grew up with an old off-brand piano. I love old off-brand pianos. Maybe someday, if I ever become ridiculously wealthy, I'll get a Steinway. But I like free old pianos. They've got history and a bit more personality to them. All right, my friends, I have a clinic I need to get to. An athletic clinic being put on by a friend of mine that I want to show support to. So we're gonna call it a day, I think. Yes, right. There are so many people. There are always free pianos and organs on Facebook Marketplace. There are always free pianos and organs, because they're big pieces of furniture, basically. People start learning, then they stop learning, and they want more room in their house, or someone passes away and they pass on the piano to someone who doesn't play piano. You can always get a free piano, which is nice. It's one of the beautiful things about pianos. They can always be repurposed. So yes, I'm going to do one last advertisement for my streams of revenue. If you found this stuff useful, if you found it beneficial in any way, please consider supporting my life. All right, the way I eat, the way I pay my bills, pay my my student loans. Check out all the really cool products in my bookshop. My textbook on composing and my textbook on emotions and music tend to be my most popular. Actually, no, my most popular is the Composer's Room, the free book I have. So check that one out. The other two are the most popular paid resources. And then I do have room for a couple more private lessons if you want to check those out. Also, bookshop, there's room for the class has started. The class has started. It's a 12-week class. We've only done one class that we meet Wednesdays at noon, Detroit time. It's a class about composing taught through the lens of the string section. We're going to learn about writing for strings, how to write idiomatically so that they work so you can have them performed, how to write melodies, chord progressions, how to mix your ideas, all that kind of cool stuff. There's space still for 2 students because I'm limiting it to, I think, like 6 total. We have, so yeah, there's room for one more student actually. 12 lessons, 12 weeks worth of lessons for only $300. Check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. The first lesson was a lot of fun. The lessons are supposed to be an hour long, but we ended up going for like an hour and a half because it was just a lot of fun. It was like a live stream, but we all got in video chat together so we could all talk together. So it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I've got lots of free resources, my blog, my academy. Oh yeah, and my emotions and music class. This is another great one. If you sign up for it, oh, I gotta fix that. That looks janky. If you sign up for my emotions and music class right now, you automatically get enrolled in the beta testing for my new update to the class, which is going beyond emotions and music and just going specifically into cinematic storytelling. How do you write character themes? How do you write, how do you create sound palettes that are unique to a story world and all that kind of cool stuff? And how do you develop it? So all that cool stuff that helps me pay my bills. Thank you everyone who stopped by. I appreciate all of you. I hope it was helpful. Yeah, I'll be live again next week. So I'll see you then. All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you all again sometime. Bye.